Hi guys, welcome to Winsome Cottage Garden. My name is Hannah. I'm so glad that you decided to join me today. We are back at the cottage and we have a couple projects that I wanted to share with you. Probably going to be in two different videos, but the first of which is this one where we have a couple more plants I've managed to pick up in my wanderings to garden centers to help fill out that front garden bed that we've been working on over the last season. Let me show you what I've got and where I think they're gonna go. You can see that there's a little bit of maintenance while I'm out here. I'll probably cut back at least a couple of the bleeding hearts. Some of them still have some green. I'll just go through and see if there's any other deadheading or pest things that need to be done. But you can see that these are Millennium chives. They're ornamental. Oh. One of the things I'm gonna be doing is being on the lookout for Japanese beetle. I don't have a jar going, but I should go get one. So, but you can see that we have this drift of Millennium chives. Originally, we had another plant here that did not make it through the winter. So I was able to pick up two more chives to finish out this like rounded bed. And I think, to be honest, it was missing. Like without it, it's a little odd shading, but you can see this is what it looks like without. It's not like awful, but it definitely has this giant hole here that having these chives evenly spaced to match the rest will just kind of complete the swoop. So we've got those to get planted. I also, I'm definitely going to cut this back. Oh, it looks like something nibbled on our toad lilies. That's a bummer. They'll hopefully survive, but I did pick up one more toad lily that I'm thinking will go here. Not 100% sure, but that's what it's looking like. So I have one toad lily. I would like to add one more, but I actually have a couple in my house I'm gonna have to move. So I thought that I would, instead of buying some, divide them and bring some of them here. Because I've got one here, one set here. I'd actually like to add one right there. And then some more like here-ish. I think that would be really pretty. I also managed to get my hands on one more astilbe that grows fairly large. I'm still on the lookout for some that I like that are smaller, but I am also happy to wait for sales to go on. So, in addition to getting these planted, doing some like cutting back, I also want to take a moment to get a look at the ivy. So you can see it's put on a lot of growth this year, so I'm going to take a minute to see if there's anything that I can train to continue up our trellis here as well, so it can keep on moving the way that we want it to eventually look like. It is about midday. It's not as warm as this bit of the city, but it is still quite warm, so I'm going to try and keep to working in the shade, because why work in the sun when you can work in the shade? Let me quickly go get a jar of soapy water for any pesky Japanese beetles that I find along my way. I'm not even sure if the one that I saw is still... I think he has moved on. He heard my threat, but I still want to get a jar, so if I see any others I can quick flick them out of the way. I don't think this bed is one that we put together that's supposed to be deer resistant. I've noticed one or two things that I think maybe got the lightest of nibbles, which I'm not really fond of. So once I get this all done, I might also see if we have any like deer keep away or anything like that that I could put down just for a little while. All that said, let's get you guys set up and we'll show you this project. And then afterwards I'll come back, show you what they look like planted, and give you a little bit more information on the plants that we got in the ground. Okay, I just saw something I want to share with you. We have a pair of turtle doves, mourning doves, that were mating and had some babies. I don't know if you can see, there's one right there. There's one right there. Those are the babies. Mom just flew away, but she was walking around with them. Look how cute they are. Okay, this one right here at the bottom of the screen, right there, is definitely a baby. I think that one is too. Yeah. I wonder if Mom will come back if I go away. But I just thought I would share because it's the first time I've seen them out of the nest, which is so exciting. done, which is good. I did it in one fell swoop, but you might be able to tell from my face that it's really warm. There's actually like a delicious breeze coming in, but the bed that I'm working in is blocked completely from it. So the next project I have is actually going to be in a place where I'll get tons of breeze, which you'll be quite welcome. But before I start that, I thought I would quick show you what it looks like with these plants in, point out some of the maintenance-y things I did and why, and give you some more details on the plants that we put in the ground. Here are the chives in the ground. You know, when I looked at them in their containers, I knew they weren't as wide as the ones that had been in their place for a year, but I didn't realize how much shorter they were until I got them in. And I hope I got the spacing right, because these have one more year. They are, like, if you look at them from above, I'd estimate them to be about 8 inches at their base, and these are more like 4 to 6. So I spaced them so they should, when they catch up, which I'm sure they will soon enough, they hopefully will kind of fill in. You can tell these 1, 2, 3, 4 get a ton of sun, and then this one is not as happy. It could be that there's a lot more water here, or it could be that this doesn't get quite as much sun. I'm not quite sure which, but in a couple of years, I don't know if you will notice the difference. You will see that the ones that were in their container are a little bit further along. They're showing a little bit more color than the ones that were here, but I think that's just because when things are in their container, they're stressed. So this completes the swoop. There are now 7 in this semicircle. I always called them millennium chives, but I actually think that they're ornamental onions. I mean, onions and chives are related, but these are millennium alliums. So they produce these round clusters that you can see them coming in about this late summer, and they go all the way to the fall. I do even like, though, their green strappy texture. I think it's really pretty and glossy. They're going to get 12 to 18 inches high and about 12 to 18 inches wide. Oh, isn't that pretty? I read an article today that monarchs have just been placed on an endangered list, which makes me so sad. But I'm glad to see them here. We try to plant plants that pollinators like. So anyway, this bed, I think I've mentioned it in previous videos, but in case you haven't seen them, in general, from like the rhododendron to the right is pretty deep shade. But from the rhododendron over gets a decent amount of sun. So these we're hoping will like their spot and kind of help complete this swoop. And I think in time it'll form like a little round cluster around it. I should also mention that these are zones 5 through 9. We at the cottage are zone 6, so they should do pretty well here. Okay, if we make our way over here, I planted this astilbe right here. It is a lowlands ruby red astilbe. It gets about 20 to 24 inches tall and 16 to 24 inches wide. It's very hardy. It is a zone 3 through 8, and it'll bloom late spring to early summer. So this one I think has already technically bloomed, and I think it probably is. You'll notice there's 2 astilbe in here. There's one here which looks a little amaranthine in how it flops over, and then one over here which got hit by a sprinkler. Not the everyday ones, but a different one, so it's kind of fallen over. But they bloomed probably beginning of July. What I love about astilbe is, and you can even see it here, these are fading a little bit, but they'll be like a light tan and still provide a lot of visual interest even into the winter. Well, sometimes, in fact, I let them dry completely and cut them and use them in winter arrangements. So even though they bloom early, they still provide interest. I suspect this one bloomed at the nursery and they cut back the blooms. So I don't know if you could tell when you were in here, but this bed is brand new. We used what was supposed to be a raised bed mix, but it holds on to a lot of moisture. So especially in the back that doesn't get much sun. The good news is astilbes love a moist soil, so I'm hoping to plant probably 2 or 3 more to kind of help fill in this space. I would love eventually in the next 5 years or so, in the height of the summer, to not see any of the mulch. Like obviously in the spring almost all of these things are deciduous, so they die back completely, and we can mulch it, help keep weeds controlled, or even with the ivy that we're training, which I'll get to in a minute, letting it fill this bed so that we just really see glorious foliage. So yeah, those are all zone 3 through 8. I think I said that, and a lowlands ruby red astilbe. I'm really liking that. This right here is a totally, also known as an orchid flower. This, hands down, is one of my is probably my favorite, next to hostas, if I'm being honest, shade plant. It can handle full to part shade. It loves pollinators. It makes a great cut flower. The deer don't eat it, and they're just so delicate. I have a couple in my house at home that are different, but this one is blooming early. Usually I'd say these bloom more like August. But this again is what happens when things are in their nursery containers. But this one I like because it's got a variegated foliage, and the flowers on this are just so pretty. I love the little spots, and I think it will add quite, oh, and you can see it already had a baby kind of popping out that I tucked away. It will add such a nice little pop of late summer to fall interest here. This will get 12 to 18 inches tall and 10 to 14 inches wide. I have found in my experience they actually get a little bit wider, and you can divide them and they continue going. It's hardy down to a zone 4. It also loves like a moister soil, so I think will like this area and help kind of relieve some of the clagginess that this soil has. So those 3 are the 3 things I added to this bed on this trip. You also may have seen me cut back. I left some of it. That one I left some of these guys because they still had some light. But any of the bleeding hearts that were fully yellow, I cut back. So over here you can see, like, this one, for instance, was looking kind of bad, so I took it all the way down. And I added a stake since I am going to be adding more plants here as the summer goes on. I want to make sure I remember that there's one here. But this area in particular, I think I could add a couple more totally, or a couple. I'd love to get another astilbe or 2 back here because I think there's some area here that we could fill in. The only other bit of maintenance I did that you will have seen is I went along the back and found some of the ivy that was growing, had put out runners down along, and I started working their way above. Eventually we would like it to have this entire arch covered by the ivy. So it just needs a little training to help get it going. And you'll see right now that there's actually a lot of undersides showing. They'll reorient themselves for the sun quite easily. So I'm excited to see, because we put these in last year and they're already probably about 3.5, 4 feet up the pole. Eventually we'll also let the ivy kind of go around and be a ground cover in this bed as well, which will provide an evergreen pop of color. So man, these ligularia, they're not like the prettiest of spires, but they provide such a bright yellow, and the pollinators absolutely love them. My favorite part about them is their leaf. I think it's pretty bold, which is fun, though it looks like there might be some like earwig damage that we might need to mitigate. Anyway, I love this bed. I know we only put it in about a year ago, but I think it's becoming one of my favorite spots here at the cottage. Since there were a lot of good things that I was doing, I wanted to bring you along. I highly suggest, if you have plants in an area that you're planning on working on that you have to cut back or die back fully in the fall, like the bleeding hearts, that you mark them. I cannot tell you how many times I've been planting only the next year to realize that I had another plant there, or when I'm digging, unfortunately, find it when I'm destroying it. So marking your plants, if you're still working in an area, is a really great way. The stakes I found are a bit clunky. I couldn't find anything smaller, but I'll keep it a lookout and probably change them to something a little bit more discreet, so they don't stand out as much as the season progresses, because this is a bed. I've mentioned a couple other plants that I'd like to add to it, but because this is the one that I'm really hoping to, in the end of season sales, pick up a couple more items to really stack this fall and keep it looking and growing on beautifully. So anyway, thank you for joining me again. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.